Welcome to the science of brain mapping. Maximize your brain's true potential through IMI Academy, ISO certified, pioneers in brain mapping in affiliation with NAEC and APA. What is brain mapping? Brain mapping is the study of the pattern on your fingertips. This study has absolute scientific basis with many years of research. It is analyzed and proven with evidence in anthropology, genetics, medicine, and statistics. It is a scientific process using complex algorithms to discover your true potential. You can master your own life as well as your relationships because the key to a successful relationship is understanding each other. And as they say, misunderstanding is the primary cause of good, bad, and ugly. So let's start with a basic understanding of what brain mapping is and how this science works. Another term for brain mapping is innate intellect. Innate refers to inborn and intellect refers to your processor. So brain mapping is an understanding of how your inborn processor works. This processor is what we call your neocortex. And the reason it's inborn is because the neocortex gets formed in the womb between the 13th and 21st weeks and is full and final once you are born. So brain mapping is an understanding of how your inborn processor works. Think of a computer. When you buy a computer, it comes with an inbuilt processor, right? If you don't use that computer, will the processor be of any use? The same is true with the brain. Every child is born with an inbuilt processor that we call the innate intellect, and only when you start receiving data does the processor start to process. Only when inputs start to be received does the processor process to give you output. This output is called intelligence, and intelligence is ever growing. That's why we study or learn to increase our intelligence every day. It's important to understand the difference between intellect and intelligence, as intellect will never change, but intelligence is ever growing. Intelligence is based on input, and so the more input you give correctly, the more intelligent you will be. But the key to giving correct inputs only happens when you fully understand how this processor processes. And that is what brain mapping helps you understand. Now let's go a little more in depth to understand how your intellects process. The brain, your neocortex, has a total of 5 brain lobes, namely the prefrontal, frontal, parietal, temporal, and occipital. For easy understanding, it's called the action lobe, the think lobe, the tactile lobe, the auditory lobe, and the visual lobe. As you are aware, the brain has the left side and the right side, and therefore each of these lobes carry 2 intellects, one on either side, giving a total of 10 intellects. Let's start with the action lobe. On the left side of this lobe is the intellect that we call the I. It is your sense of self, self-esteem, self-importance. It is what you believe about yourself. On the right side of this lobe is what we call we. It is how you relate to people. Are you a people's person or not? The second lobe is your think lobe. On the left side of this lobe, we have the logical processor. It is how you sequence things, how you think about cause and effect, the use of math, for example. Another example would be, if you touch fire, you will burn your fingers. So if you do not touch fire, you won't get burned. That is logic. On the right side, we have what we call the spatial intellect or your imagination. It's how you visualize or imagine through your mind's eye. An example would be daydreaming or even understanding 3D concepts. The third lobe is your tactile lobe. This lobe processes information with regards to all your muscle control. On the left side, you have fine motor control. It's how you move your fine muscles, like facial expressions or dexterity. On the right side, you have gross motor control or big muscle control. It's how you move your big muscles for things like running, jumping, and walking. On the fourth lobe is your auditory lobe. On the left side, you have the linguistic intellect. It's how you talk, your choice of words. And on the right side, you have your emotional intellect, as it is the part of the brain that perceives pitch and tone. It's how you feel about the things you hear. For example, come here, come here. I'm sure most of you could identify the emotion of what I just said by the way I said it and by the pitch and tone. The fifth lobe is your visual lobe. On the left side, you have visual observation. It's your ability to observe details like reading and seeing details. On the right side, you have visual aesthetics. It's how you see color, aesthetics, and beautification. Before we go ahead and understand how each one of these intellects process information, it's important to know that every time there is an input, information will be processed by all of your 10 intellects simultaneously. And what makes you who you are is based on which of your intellects are the strongest, because that's where your first output will come from. There are two ways in which your intellects process information. 1. Each of these intellects has a speed. 2. Each intellect has a style. Let's start with speed. Every human being is gifted with 100% total speed that then gets divided into your 10 intellects, which is what makes each one of us unique. Let's take my own example. Let's say I have 13% speed in my eye, 9% speed in my we, 5% speed in my logic, 8% speed in my imagination, 5% speed in my fine motors, 5% speed in my gross motors, 15% speed in my language, 20% speed in my emotions, 5% speed in my observation, and 15% speed in my aesthetics. Now, if you were to shout at me for getting something done, my emotional and my I intellects see me being emotional about the situation instead of using my logic first. Now, let's understand processing styles. Your style is determined by your actual fingerprint, and these prints represent your neural pathways. When an input goes in, it becomes an electrical signal and travels this pathway to get processed before you get an output. There are 3 basic types of prints, and each finger could have any one of these 3 prints. Let's start with the first. The first style is called the self-cognitive processing style. This style is represented by a whirl. When you have a self-cognitive pathway, input goes in and travels inward only, and you will not get an output until you have finished processing it. So most important, this is the longest processing pathway amongst all 3, and it also processes the maximum. Apart from that, this processing style is also an inward processing style, and therefore will always internally process based on one's own belief systems. When a self-cognitive is processing, no external influence can affect them. They will process internally and on their own. In this processing style, we are able to calculate speed. Let me give you a hypothetical example. If you are self-cognitive in your logic, it means that you will not get affected by what others think, and your logic will always be based on your own belief systems. The second style of processing is called affective imitative processing. This processing style is represented by a loop. In the affective imitative processing style, information flows in and out with very little processing, and that's why it's called affective or imitative, because what goes in only partly gets modified and comes out. When you have this sort of a processing style, you are unable to create an output or process without first having input. With this processing style, we're able to calculate speed as there is some processing. Let me give you a hypothetical example. If you are affective imitative in your logic, it means that you will get affected by what others think, and your logic will always be influenced by those around you. Let me give you a comparison so you can understand this better. Let's say person A is all self-cognitive and person B is all affective imitative, and I ask them both to create a dance for me. Person A will be capable of creating that dance individually and uniquely, whereas person B will have to watch a video or have some external input to create a version of a dance for me. The third style of processing is referred to as reflective processing. This is represented by an arc. The reflective style is the shortest and fastest of all three and is referred to as genius potential. Input and output flows through this processor very fast. This style is reflective of the environment as there is no processing or modification of the input. Because this processor is so fast, huge amounts of data can pass through this processor simultaneously, which is why, if tapped correctly, has genius potential. With this processing style, we're unable to calculate speed and therefore mark it as infinite. Also, with this style of processing, there is so much potential and plasticity and so much data can flow all at once that structure and guidance are needed to maximize learning potential. Each one of us is a complex combination of the 10 intellects, speed, and style, which makes us each unique. As Albert Einstein puts it, everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing it's stupid. Come, explore your true potential, your personality, your preferred way of communicating, and help yourself be a better you.